Hey now, Rob here, Rob School of Music, and I am absolutely stoked to be hanging out with the legendary Travis Stever of Coheed and Cambria and LS Dunes. Welcome, brother.
I'm going to take the legendary.
Yes, yes.
Before I was like, legendary, I don't know about it because this was a take two. But thank you, Rob. It's an honor to be here. We've been trying to get this in for a long time, so I'm glad to be here, man.
Absolutely, man. I really appreciate it. And you know what? Like being a Rockland kid growing up, cutting my teeth doing those shows in Nyack and stuff, like you are a legend, because like I remember the Nyack Center and Letchworth Village and Pearl River and all the early, Shibuti and Coheed shows. And it's like, look at you now. You're like, you are a fucking god. So yeah, dude, killing it.
I appreciate it, man. One of the things that I learned from our early days, and I'm sure you did too, is just consistently playing and staying busy is really the only way I know to be the best practice. Always writing and trying to just be creative as much as possible with the music, and trying to, not shut down, like stay involved. I mean, have your boundaries. I've had to learn that myself, but also stay involved in everything you can. Like there's so many musicians out there I respect. And if, and from Rockland, nonetheless, that I grew up with, that I've been able to play with. And some of them deserve to be known. Some of them are very known, but it's one of those things. Like, it's an honor to have you say that because you're doing all this incredible work with the kids and with the school. But then I see you play and I'm like, oh, damn, like I watched recently, was it a street fair or was it just an event you had for the school, but you were outside and you were playing with some of the kids and you just ripped this solo. And I was like, oh man, dude, Rob is, joke dog,
dude.
Like, so.
Thank you. Thank you. That means,
and I know that you write some great stuff too. Like that's what's cool is like, you're able to share that with all these people. If we weren't so distant, which is not that distant, you're only 15 minutes away. But if you were around here, my son would be with you. I just love that our communities have these places that you've created,
Dude. Yeah. I mean, it feels very special. And thank you for those compliments. It definitely feels special to still be, in the area. Like we're in Suffern. I went to Suffern High School and like to be teaching, classmates children and like still be the music guy, and it goes to the beginning. So like what was your beginning? Like what was the thing that you saw? Was there a concert or a record where you're like, that's it?
Well,
that's
my real beginning was in Suffern too, and so was Claudio, singer and guitar player, songwriter in Coheed, was born in Suffern. We were born in the hospital in Suffern. That's where I was born. He was born there. If I didn't say that right, he was born. I was there. But we both came into the world in Rockland County, in Suffern. For me personally, my parents were living in Greenwood Lake at the time, and my parents had met in an off-Broadway touring production of Jesus Christ Superstar. So if that doesn't say, right away, I'm surrounded by music, right?
Yeah.
My mom still was in the music industry for a little while I was a baby, but started to realize if that dude is going to continue chasing the rock dream, I better get it together so I could take care of this baby, right? So my father, consistently still a songwriter, but I grew up with the sounds all around me, family members, and then I, though I had no siblings, through my parents, I had chosen siblings. One of them being someone who introduced Claudio and I when we were younger, and that's a friend of mine named Rory Hohenberger. And his brother and his sister Jane and his brother Gary were, a massive part of the music that I got to hear. And our fathers were in a band together. My dad was in a band with his father here in Rockland. They had bands that actually were really well known in Rockland, and we can get into that later. But, those people being in my life and eventually step siblings, my parents split up and both remarried, but my mother married who became my other dad. Bruce had sons and a daughter, and all of their music I was a sponge for that stuff. Like, I was lucky because I had all these incredible things brought into my life very young, you know. Some of them brought the whole punk hardcore world, you know. I love Madonna just as much, though, you know. I would sit
Right.
and listen to True Blue with my stepsister all day long if I could, you know. Just like Somewhere in Time, it was just as important, you know. Um, really, that was what shaped me musically. It's just, you know, I had a Davenport cabinet was a project I had years ago, and one of the albums I released was called Nostalgia in Stereo, and the meaning of the song and the meaning of the title is just that I really feel memory through music. If I hear a certain song from my childhood, like most people, I can get the hair stand up and the goosebumps, but I am just, you know, filled with memories right away.
I
I
love
go
it.
back in time, and I love that. I'm addicted to it for sure. So a lot of the music that I grew up to, really, I can pinpoint 3 albums that I walked around my Fisher Price boombox was Synchronicity by the Police, Christopher Cross Sailing, and Abbey Road by the Beatles. And those
Great.
were my first 3 top albums that I chose out of what my parents had. And it went on from there, you know, but those are great templates for the music that I would still love to this day. Um, yeah.
I love
And
that.
I, you know, in how did I get to instruments? My father had guitars laying around my whole life. He was a singer songwriter and he sang more in bands, but he always had acoustic guitars. And I would pick them up and mess with them. And I had uncles that played, you know, guitar and stuff. I didn't have anybody that was like an electric guitar player in the immediate family that was an elder. I never had that. That's what I drifted to, you know. I grew up around my father playing with those musicians like that were the electric lead and electric rhythm and that I looked up to in ways they could be like uncles kind of like Rory Hohenberger, who I talked about. His father was somebody that I really looked up to, Gary Hohenberger, and he was an incredible guitar player and you know, that definitely electric guitar player and acoustic, but electric more or less. And that's kind of like how I got to see the world at a young age. And I remember the acoustic guitars were a big deal because I remember sitting around even after years of just pretending to be able to play them. I remember the Guns N' Roses Patience video came on, and they're all playing acoustic, right? So there was a little like, you know, correlation action in my brain that was like, oh, those are cool to play. Because at that time I was like, if I'm ever going to play guitar, I'm going to go play electric, you know,
Right.
not knowing a damn thing about it, only knowing the chords my father had showed me. But I picked up those acoustics then, and I was like, well, I know, you know, an E, you know, an E minor, an E major. I know an A minor, A major. I know D. You know, all the major and minor of your main. Well, all of
Right.
all of the chords. You know, because that's what you start with. Everything that's, you know, minor and major, and you're trying to write. And that's what I started doing, was just trying to form. And eventually, what I cared about was learning songs. I, you know, of course, got into Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and you know, um, and that was really the beginnings for me. You know, before that, I thought that Satan had created all music at one point,
Yeah.
just because I had a crazy. I was in love with music, and then all of a sudden, I had this crazy thing where I was petrified that, especially all rock and metal. I remember buying Somewhere in Time was the first album I bought with my own
Ooh.
money, and it was really more for the art. But I remember my stepbrother Steve being like, you know, a bunch of kids did a seance listening to that record. And they all burned in the house. That album, and I quickly put it right back with my mom had, amazingly enough, and this is how, you know, this is how privileged I was with rock and metal as a kid. Is my mom had the original. My mom, of all people, if you met her, you'd go, "What?" She had the original Black Sabbath with the witch on it in her
Nice.
record collection. You'd think it was my dad's, but no, this was my mom. She got it at an actual festival that Black Sabbath was on,
Whoa.
and it was an original pressing. Screw me still to this day for giving that original pressing away. It was mine after that. But that record had to stay in her collection away from me at that point, right? So Somewhere in Time went right next to that. You fast forward about 8 months, I was obsessed with all of them.
Nice.
Give me all the metal, give me all the rock. So by the time I got to that point is around exactly the time that I Correlation, because Guns N' Roses just dropped Appetite. That's when and Lies, Lies, Lies. So that's when I kind of like was like, oh, these acoustic guitars can still be utilized in this world, just like the electric. And I started to be open to learning all of it, And Zeppelin comes in, and it's like, oh, I'm the one playing Stairway to in the the age old joke. I'm going in and playing it at the rock guitar store,
Yeah.
and so and then the punk and hardcore and all that stuff came through my step siblings and friends, and I was very lucky. I was very lucky. My favorite songwriter of all time, still being Neil Young, was, though I grew up to my father listening to some of his music and my mother, especially Crosby, Stills, and Nash, I found Neil Young's music more on my own through like digging through my uncle's vinyl, and I took all this vinyl because I had a Sanyo cassette, CD, and I must have been like 12 when I got it, and record player. And I was like, well, I could take all these records, And so I took Neil Young Decade and Harvest, and boom, that was it. It just opened, and then the correlation between Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth and the sounds of like, the grunge era, because that was happening, that was beginning. Like I'm bouncing around a little, we
I love
with
it.
GNR and hair metal and full on metal. And then once grunge and all that stuff started, and then I was lucky because at an early age, I met, through my chosen sibling, Rory Homberger, I met, I found a best friend in Claudio Sanchez through him, and we started having bands and would get turned on by him and our friend Patrick Sayers, who we were in bands with, and they would turn me on to music that I hadn't heard yet. And we just all did that for each other since we were kids. But I was really lucky because being an only child, to have that kind of culture, come to me through these other people was essential for me I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't love music the way I do. I really don't think I would. So
I love that so much. I think that, we're probably a handful of years away from each other in age. Like that experience of someone turning you on to a record and giving it to you and saying, hey, listen to this. Like now everyone can listen to everything at once, but there was something so sacred of sitting down and putting it on the turntable and listening, enjoying it, or putting the cassette in, or here's a mixtape someone made, or all this stuff. It was just, it felt like more of a hunt to find and get turned on to new music. But then when you found it, it was like, it was yours, and it was part of your soul.
It was a sonic safari, right?
Yes.
It's like you're like digging through like all the BS to get to like the real awesome wild beasts, and once you hear it, like and then you never want to go back, like and you keep, you're addicted to searching.
Yes.
It's funny. I mean, I may or may not be around 46. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know which.
Yeah.
But so anyway, at my age, which is right on the cusp of every, like, growing up around every change of media for music. A good friend of mine, BJ Allen, who I've worked with in music a bunch of times, who's good friends with JR, who we'll probably bring up, but are very mutual, my brother-in-law and incredible friend. He basically sent a meme and just said all of us can understand it, and it was no wonder. Like, I'm right on the cusp, if I haven't said that enough times, but Generation X, I would relate myself to the most with that. I guess being like, I'm in 78, so like there's always been this question of like from 78 to like 80, like what the hell do you call us? But we still were part of what Generation X went through, which was go buy vinyl. All right, now your cassettes. 8-track never really mattered to us, but it was, now you want this on vinyl. Now you want this on cassette. Now you want this on CD. Now you're just going to stream it. No wonder we're pissed. We've been thrown around in music for years. Like, you know,
Right.
and there's always the fad going on now. I still think vinyl, if I really love an album, I have a massive collection of vinyl, I'm going to go buy it on record.
Me too.
But you know, I still see these like things, these fads of like, you know, cassettes were back around. And now I hear people are buying CDs again. I'm like, what? Like, and CDs were an incredible, you know, way to hear music, but they also were clutter city. So
Yes.
it's like, you know, not that records aren't. You have to have a massive cabinet for them, but I think it's worth it with records.
Yes.
But
Agreed.
anyway, like we've been through so much to get to the place where we want to hear music as perfect as possible, and then we're just streaming it, and the life's getting sucked out of it. Now,
Yeah.
that's from, you know, that's like a Neil Young has been on a battle for that for years, and I appreciate that battle. But hey, I utilize streaming just like everybody else now, just because like if I want to hear a record before I know it's worth buying on vinyl, I'm going to stream it first, you know.
Absolutely. We're playing
So,
records at the school here all the time. Like literally, like I had this guy on all week.
oh,
This guy on
sweet.
all week. So like we're blasting this stuff, man. It's
What's
like
cool about that, and you holding those two records up, is they are the beginnings of both. You know,
that's why I picked those to literally
Yeah,
all week
that's
long,
pretty
like knowing
awesome.
this was coming. Yeah.
Second
Killer
stage,
stuff.
second stage. There's so much history in this area. There's history in this area for every record, just because it's where we're from. You know, specifically Claudio and myself. But second stage is just, you know, between up in Kingston and Woodstock and here in Nyack was really where it was. You know, it was all born and created.
Dude, like
Actually, specifically in Paramus. You know,
oh, that was Jason. Was that
Jason?
guy?
Jason
wow.
Studios.
Interference. Shout out.
Yeah, Stained Glass Studio. We did it there, and we just thought it was demos. Though he made it sound great, but we mixed it at Applehead, which really brought it to the level it needed to be to actually release it. But we thought they were just demos, and Equal Vision were like, you know, these sound pretty damn good. You know, it seems like we have the record. And we were like, what? But you know, it would be cool to reapproach those songs, but I would never change what they are there. You know, like that's a time capsule that if you listen to every part of it, there's a story. You know, there's a story already, but there's even more of a story. Which each sound, each, you know, scenario, I have memories attached to everything about that record.
I was working at Hot Topic when the that Equal Vision sampler came out with Delirium Trigger on it, and I remember every kid who came in, I'm like, "You need this, you need this, you need this, you need this."
Thank you.
Yeah, of course,
that's a big part of getting the word out. You know, because that was it. That's all we had.
Right.
That's all we had. We toured with just that sampler for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks.
And now you played at MSG a couple months ago.
Yeah,
that
was pretty awesome, man. It was an honor and a privilege to be playing with Incubus, but it was really cool to play there and realize, hey, this is our show too. You know, like
Dude,
it's
the energy in that room, like it, you know, there was so much of here there that night, and it felt, I don't know, like it took me back to being a kid and just all the songs. I don't know, it's amazing stuff. Let's talk about so you first get into bands, you're doing your thing. What was the practice regimen like for you? Because you're a very diverse player. I mean, your influences, it was so cool to hear all those, because I hear that in your parts and what you're doing over the years and all the different projects and everything. But when you were first starting by yourself in terms of your practice routine, and then like as a band, like was it just in the garage for 10 hours every weekend? Like what was that like?
I now understand that for me personally, I've always been more, I wish I centered more on theory stuff. And later in life, I've become more open to that than ever. Because the people that I respect the most, in not only from a distance as a fan, but also in working with, are the people that are able to find the balance of learning the theory side and understanding things, which I don't, you know. And, you know, it's more on feel. It's more on what sounds good. And but I think that, you know, my son learning now, I'm not going to push him into anything, but I try and be like, please be open to this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, work on your scales, work on trying to read music, because it's you're going to be way ahead of certain people in that sense, because that if you naturally have that ability to want to just get into a groove or go with the flow musically, and you have an ear, then you're not going to lose that because you know things. I always thought you'd lose it and it would, you don't lose it. There are
Right.
people in my life like Zach Cooper, who plays bass for Coheed, and even, it's funny that there are bass players in my life like Tim Payne, who plays in LS Tunes. These two guys are like two of the best players that I know in my life, and they know music theory, and they know, like, when I talk to Zach Cooper, I'm dealing with somebody who can give me the actual term for what each thing is musically, and or how it fits into theory, but also know right away if it sounds good or not, and not really give a shit if it doesn't work on the theory end, as long as it sounds good. I grew up with people that were really fluent in theory, but it would frustrate them that people that don't know theory can just slide in. And that's not a way to live either. And they would have issues with going off the map, they would have issues with going off the script, when that is the furthest thing from what I want to be part of. But you can know both, find a balance, and you can go off that whenever you want. It's just about knowing it, so that if you want to be on it, or if you want to go sit in a pit to play on Broadway, they're going to hire you because I don't have that. So maybe someday I will. Like I said, maybe I'm in my mid 40s, but whatever. I'm 46 years old. I got to accept it. But I work on things still to this day, and I'd like to be at a point where I would be able to be utilized, or I could utilize my playing for anything I want. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I feel like that's the key, is knowing more theory. But I digress. I really learned by writing, and I think that's the one thing that I've ever had to offer, is when it comes to having riff ideas or melody ideas, whether it be on a song I have or a song, somebody else's songs. That's what I think I've had a lot to offer on Claudio's songs throughout the years, is I come with something that hopefully is catchy and infectious, and helps the song, or brings us to a point where we're like, ooh, that's opening a new door in the song. Whether or not the initial part and how I play it is exactly what it's going to be in the end, it's opened the door to something that wasn't there before, and that brings the song to a new level. And that's been my strength a lot to songs. Sometimes it's just having the riff that leads everybody else to want to create over it, and write vocals over it. Sometimes it's a guitar part that it's better off being a vocal melody. You know what I'm saying? Or it's better off being the bass line, and it leads you to that, But regardless, it's just something that I feel really lucky I have, is an intuition on finding something that will open new doors, be interesting, and perhaps even catchy. And sometimes they fail, but I've had a good track record with coming up with some stuff that seems to inspire. And I've also been good. I've gotten better and better at life with being able to, first off, take a knee and say, it's okay that I'm not playing on this one. I play on, the other 8 that I'm so proud of everything I wrote and played, or that we wrote and played. Sometimes it's about being able to say, you got that part already. I'll record your idea and make it my own. It's a struggle though, right? Like, I watch my son going through it with writing with and we're talking about a 10-year-old, so it's the earliest stages. But I love that those conversations are already happening, because they're cutting to the chase of what collaboration needs to be.
Yes. Dude, I see that with my students, because we have a big band program here at the school, and we have this one 11-year-old girl who can just pull a song out of nothing. She like taps into another universe, and watching the conversation happen of like singing a vocal part, and the guitar player is like, oh, what about this? And like, these are little kids, and they're having that conversation with all these intangible things. It's magic. I don't know. It's like sorcery or something. It's really cool to watch. It
truly is. You're taking it from out, like, you're just picking it from nowhere. You're just taking these melodies, and they're these little gifts, and you can have somebody who's the 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 grumpy curmudgeon, you know, like, well, that sounds like this, or that
Uh-huh.
sounds like, and I've been that person. But one of my new rules is to be that person the least possible in my life, because everything can sound like something. But, you know, if I'm going to say something sounds like something, I would prefer it to be a compliment anymore. Aside from, we shouldn't do that, because then sometimes my job can be like, oh, that sounds a lot like this to me. It's awesome. But then, okay, if you're collaborating, then write something that opens a new door so that that influence is there. But whatever you're doing brings it to a different place. You
Right.
know what I mean? And that's like, that to me is ultimate collaborating, because oftentimes when you shut something down just because you feel like it sounds like something, or, you know, you're really cutting your nose off in spite of your face, because there could be potential there to turn it into something that has nothing to do with what you initially related it to or heard, you know? And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of writing music. Music, if you're writing a song that's just acoustic, and it's like, you know, and it's just a vocal melody, and you start singing, you know, um, it's not what I planned. The pancakes were overcooked, you know. The pancakes were, you know, like, you can't do that.
Right.
Like, you know, if you're just playing, it's not what I, you know, if you're doing the same melody as something that's so well known and it's just you and a guitar, well, do better.
Yeah. You're gonna get caught.
But you know, or switch that shit up so it's your own. But there's so much potential when you're working with a bunch of people that are, you know, like-minded musicians that are willing to explore. There's endless possibilities. Just because the initial song sounds like, you know, some sort of you know, let's say it sounds like I'm gonna try and not go too like weird, but let's say it sounds like an Iron Maiden song, but then you bring a riff that sounds like the friggin' Minutemen, like, to, like, you know what I mean? But then you add a little, like, you know, harmony to it, so you're not too far out of the metal world. You got, like, thinking, like, interesting, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's yeah,
It's
endless
awesome.
possibilities. It's magic, like you said. It's like sorcery, and that magic is something that blows me away constantly.
Oh, dude, I love hearing the passion for it. Like, I think passion is the coolest thing in life. Um, so you mentioned JR Vanguard Tattoo. I carry him around with me all the time.
Too, buddy. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
carrying him around since. Funny enough, I went into, when he was in Suffern. I don't think it was called Physical Graffiti anymore, but might have been after that. But I mean, or maybe it was. But I went in to get, actually, we talk about musical influences. The first one he gave me, and I had a couple that I got, Sacred Tattoo, and which he worked at, I believe, before, years
Wow.
before, in the East Village. But this is a Thin Lizzy Chinatown tattoo, and he
Nice.
did that on me when I was 20,
Wow.
and now he's my brother-in-law, and
That's amazing.
and we're 26 years later. My brother-in-law and a best friend and an incredible ally in just life. Done art for many musical excursions that I've had. Done incredible work for a lot of family and friends. You know.
I feel he's one of my favorite people, man. Like, we have the deepest
Absolutely.
conversations with art, life, business. He helped me get out of and through a horrible breakup. Just an amazing man. I remember a specific point in time. He was chiseling away at my elbow, and he put some music on. He's always turning me on to cool music, and it was that first LS Dunes record, and I was like, "What's going on here? This is really cool."
That's
Um,
awesome.
so let's talk.
Promoting.
Yeah, baby.
Thank
No,
you,
he's
JR.
got your back, dude. Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that new record, January 31st, Violet. What was the recording process like? Like, what's going on there?
It's different because with Past Lives, we were all separate. You know, we it was created as an experiment. You know, it was like, it was at the time the Coheed record, which became Window of the Wakened Mind, Vaxis 2. That was done. You know, and Claudio really had a vision with how he wanted that to be, and whatever was going to be finished with it, he, you know. I just knew that it was in place, that he had what he wanted, and we had worked on it. I was very proud of that record, but I had nothing to do, you know, like I was working on music. At the time we had a band called Zero Trust, but due to some health issues and things that were going on, it kind of was on hold for a while. Um, and my friend Evan Rossiter, who I shared a studio. I don't know if you know Evan, but he's a great drummer and an incredible writer. But we were working on stuff for media placement, which we still are, with something called the Diner Music. But you know, I wanted that band collaboration interaction, and I was really missing it. And we were at another full on lockdown period. I don't know if you remember, there was a moment where there was full lockdown, and then there was kind of sort of opening up, and then everything hit the fan again, and everybody's like, we got to stay in. So on that second full lockdown, there was also a Thursday stream called Signals going on. They did one in the first nutty situation of the lockdown, and then they were doing another one, which was basically for the holidays, and they called it Signals 2. And I had said I would do it, and it opened the dialogue with me and Tucker, and then I found out Frank was interested, and Tim Payne. And Tim and Tucker had been working on stuff for a while that maybe didn't fit with Thursday, or Thursday wasn't, you know, ready to work on new stuff yet. But they were like, you know, I would like to just try and send some stuff around and see what's up. Now, I already had a group of riffs together, and what became the song Antibodies. So that was one of the first things I sent. And Tucker immediately sent drums back. And I think by the end of the day, everybody had laid stuff on it. Now, we didn't have a singer yet, but that was the first song. And then Frank Iero, the other guitar player, and which a lot of people would know from My Chemical Romance, he sent a riff, or a couple of riffs, and we all added to that. And it was like immediate. It was like, you know, and then Tim sent just a bass line, which I think even became a song called Gray Veins. Like, it was so immediate that we had these song ideas just from, because we were hungry, you know, and we needed that lifeline of creating. And that album is truly magic in the fact of that it was an experiment that just kept evolving. And when it came down to finding a singer for the 5, 6, maybe even 7 instrumental things we already had, we chose 2 of them, one of them being Antibodies, and Tucker sent it to Anthony Green, who was our good friend, and I toured with him a lot in Coheed with Circa Survive, but he was in Seosin, and he's been, you know, a lot of people even know him just for his own music, under his name. But Tucker sent it to him and said it was some of his neighborhood friends. So he had no idea who was playing on it. And then he did the vocals, and he just did some loose vocals, which were amazing on Antibodies. And we were like, this is it. This is him, you know? We knew it wasn't before he even did that, but he did that, solidified it, and he told him who it was. I think he did one other song as well, and it might have been a song that ended up being called Like Forever. And we were just hooked. We were in love, you know? And that's how that creation kept going, sending stuff every day. I just couldn't wait to get something back from everybody with their parts on it, or an idea for me to lay parts on. And we created a lot of music that's still not even fully recorded out of that. And I hope that we finished quite a few of those. And a couple of those went on to go on to Violet. But we didn't get in a room together until Frank Iero's basement, probably about 5, 6 months into us deciding we were a band. Wow. And that was when everything was lifted a little more, and we all decided, you know, let's get together and play through some of these songs and see what's up. And it was there. The magic was there. Right away, we working on new stuff as we're playing the stuff that we already worked on. Fast forward, some things went down. COVID canceled some more shows. Everybody was stuck. It didn't get as bad as the first 2 waves of it, but things kind of got called off. I had to still record my guitars from a distance. Frank went in and recorded them with the producer, who I'd call a 6-member, Will Yip. He went to Studio 4 in Philly and recorded his guitars. Tucker went and did drums, but and Anthony, of course, did vocals because he's close to him, and they've worked on things with Circa and his solo stuff for years. So Anthony was in there working on the vocals, but Tim and myself had to, and also Frank broke his wrist, which really sucked. But when he healed up, he was able to go in and record at the studio. And I think somebody here in my house got COVID or something went down, and I couldn't go in the studio. But I recorded everything the same way that it was written from a distance. We reamped, okay? And that's how Past Lives was created. And the same happened for Tim. He recorded it from home. I think one of his kids had COVID, but we had the studio time set. We had to get it done. It was that remember that era, right? You remember it was
Yes.
How do we get shit done, even
Right.
though shit really seems like it's impossible.
Yes.
And we got Past Lives done. It's somewhat of a miracle. It's a magic little time capsule full of miracles. And then it came time to touring, and it's been a lot because somehow, even though you plan everything the best way possible, the Coheed record was only a few months before, and we're dealing with it again, and hopefully we're going to break it after this. But I mean, they were so close together that the touring's on top of each other, and it's about figuring out how to do it. It's a lot of moving pieces, but we got the tours in for Past Lives, and we've toured for a couple of years on it, and releasing an EP in between, still having time to go to the desert and record. Coheed's done a new record, and now Dunes has done a new record. Actually, the Dunes record was done before the Coheed record. Coheed record, a lot of the material was there, but we didn't record it until last spring, or at least finish it. A lot of it was done with Claudio's studio. But Dunes we recorded a year from January.
Wow.
Yeah, a year ago January. It would have been a full year since it was recorded. And, trying to figure out when's the right time and all these things kind of dictated when it's going to come out. But the difference with that was we came into the studio with a bunch of song ideas, some of them left over from Past Lives, a lot of them just worked on in the past months before it. And we worked them out in the studio together, and we played them together, and we all recorded in Will's studio, with Will there being a full-on, hands-on producer and member of the band working on this material with us. So in that sense, Violet is a very, very massive step forward. It's still LS Dunes. What's cool about it is you can tell that we still have a sound that is the band, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just this, evolution that's natural, but was really, really enabled by us being in the studio together. So that's the difference. The long-winded answer of how it's different.
Well, I'm excited to hear all of it. I mean, it's so cool, I think, to be able to have more than one outlet at the level you're doing that. A lot of people think musicians, they know them for their thing, and then that becomes their thing, and they're just this cardboard, one-dimensional, that's their thing. And that's sort of just how the average listener would see something. And when you listen to those two bands in specific, Coheed and Dunes, those are different things, but you're still the same dude. So to be able to express these different parts, different colors, different tonal choices, which I'm a tone nerd, it's disgusting really, but it's really, really fascinating. I think it's awesome.
Well, I'm going to share Violet with you because I can't share the new Coheed because I think that everybody would agree that if I'm doing an interview like this and we're talking about the record the way we are, I should share it. But I
love that. Thank you.
So you're going to get to hear some of those tones, and then finally when I can sit and listen to the Coheed with you, or or maybe at JR's we can sit and but you'll hear all those tonal differences there too. I mean, that album is that's really laid out as a new era in Claudio's life. I mean, the roles are very different also, and that's what makes for the difference. In now I'm me, and I bring what I bring to Coheed, especially when Claudio and I are working on something together. It turns into this thing that you could tell it's us working on it together, and it's very different than anything I would have ever done. Even down to small guitar parts that are just over a chorus he wrote. you can hear that it's us in that lab together. You know what I mean? And
That's cool.
there's nothing that I love more. It's where I come from. But it's so different than what you hear in LS Dunes because, you know, it's not just the sum of the parts in each band that make it different. It's you put on a different mask. You put on a different you know, like it's a different suit to go to that other
Yeah.
place. Like you're like, you know, and it's not even intentional. It's just like I don't really bring like, you know, I've had riffs that I've even worked on in the past few months, and I know that someday if it's an open, you know, season, I would rather show to Claudio and see if there's any chance that it interests him. And I have other riffs, and I wouldn't say that either band is off limits for either of them. It's really your own self that you feel like something works, you know. And sometimes you work against yourself with that because it should be that either one of them. It kind of goes back to what I said before. It doesn't matter if it's an initial riff. It doesn't matter what I brought. Everybody else, if it's a collaborative effort, then everybody else is bringing a whole other vibe and style to it. So it's going to change it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I don't like getting into when somebody will say, well, you know, this reminds me of what you did with, you know, and then they name another project because, you know, if somebody says to me, well, this sounds like when you did Davenport Cabinet, it's like, yeah, I understand, but whatever you take this to be is going to make it yours.
Yes.
Because this is merely a riff, a chord progression. But maybe we don't even have this riff anymore by the end of the day. We bring it somewhere else. You know, I'm just trying to spark something. And then, yeah, granted, the ego gets involved. I'm trying to spark something, and I like that I'm involved. I don't want to be involved so I can go, I wrote this song. No, I'm part of it.
Right.
Like, that's something that sometimes a lot of us forget about when we're working with other musicians. And that's the advice I could give to a lot of people. Make people feel included because they're going to be at their best if they feel included and if they feel worthy of your time and your energy in creating, because they're going to feel like they want to give more and give the best because they feel part of it. They feel part of it, you know.
Yes.
If they don't feel part of it and they feel like kind of like, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? If they feel like not neglected, and not, you know, not that it's demeaning, because art is art. It's very tough. Sometimes I understand in my older age that a lot of the time I would try and care more about how everybody else was feeling, and maybe the art suffered sometimes. You know, like, oh, I want to make sure that so-and-so is not upset because I have a great bass line, but I want them to feel like they were on it. Well, sometimes you do have to say, hey, I love this bass line, you know, or I love this guitar idea and I want it to stay, you know. And I've had to take a lesson from other people in creating that balance because I've been on the other side of it so much that I'm like, oh God, I don't want to hurt the feeling. But you know, at 46, I'm kind of like, what's best for the song?
It's about serving the song 100%. I mean, that I instill that in the students here at the school constantly. We are selecting songs for this 14, 15, 16-year-old group. And the bass player, every time I put on a song to try and, you know, pick, he's like, well, what's the bass line? I'm like, it's not about that. It's about the song. And then on the other side of it, I have a musician, my friend James, that's like my Claudio to your dynamic, like my guy that I write with. And in the studio for 20 years, it's always been whoever can play the part better, whoever can, you know, I don't care who wrote it. It's on the song. It's the song. So I hear that 100%, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you know, especially but that's the difference is like Coheed is always going to be, I've been lucky because I've had those few moments where he's wanted to write something with a riff I have or something like that. But generally, even since Second Stage, it all comes from him. So what can I add to his songs? You know what I mean? Like, and when we built something from the ground up together, which are my favorite moments, you know, it's been about, in the end, even if it came from both of us, like you said, who sounds better playing what?
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. With LS Dunes, it's a very different scenario because all the songs are coming from every one of us. And, you know, does that mean a lot of people consider the vocals or the vocal melodies and the lyrics to be the song? There's a lot of people that don't. Those are people that don't play music.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so if they were considering that, well, then Anthony writes the vocal melodies and over what we do, you know, and we arrange it to what the vocal melodies are going to be. But who writes the initial music? Every one of us. And that hasn't happened in Coheed, but it's more going to be what Claudio generally comes with a song. You know what I mean? Like, especially in this day and age. And my job, which is different, not so different, but different in the sense of how far along it is a lot of the time, is to see what I can add and open a door, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
If I can open a door, if a door needs to be opened, if we can open a door together, because especially when a song is so close to him and it means so much to him, if I can open a fucking door that he didn't open yet, then it's a big accomplishment for me.
That's
and
awesome.
I feel that with every musician I work with. And that could certainly happen with Dunes, you know, like Paper Tigers. That song, Frank had all the riffs to the rhythm riffs and even a lead kind of thing that went into the choruses. So I'm left with, you know, wanting to open doors for these verses and wanting to open doors for the bridge and wanting to open, you know, I look at it like, let's open some new doors in every place. You know, and an intro kind of guitar. I put an intro guitar that, like, I was like, let's make it kind of shoegazy, but it still goes into the, like, similar, it goes into the ending lead you had, and it opened the door to what I did on the verse.
Cool.
Like, utilizing what he already had and adding something else that I had led me to what I wanted to do in the verse. And that's opening new doors for everybody, for myself, for, you know, yeah, I mean, those are the magic moments, like you said, like sorcery. And it takes certain people to be able to hang out and not lose their mind completely in the process of being able to kind of be on the whipping post.
Well, it's the working through it,
Yeah.
Yeah, doing the work, like having that unspoken conversation and like collaboratively agreeing or disagreeing on things. It can be
Well, the
painful.
whipping post is the shoot downs. Like,
Yes.
and I've taken them on. Like, if somebody's, I've had to work, you know, I've been on the studio, the most anxiety provoking places for me were some of the Coheed records being on that control room floor, you know, with everybody looking and, well, what's your idea then? I don't know about that. Let's try this. And then you get protective, you know, and then
Right.
it's not just a producer and an engineer, but also a bandmate / main writer or whole band, or, you know, looking at you and saying, yeah, it's not really what I'm thinking. And then you're like, well, dude, I think I never had the confidence back then to say, wait, let me get to the point where I'm not playing this as I heard it. Like, just let me get there. Now, I wouldn't go back and change anything, but I would go back and go to that kid, you know, and say, have a little more confidence. Wait until you come up with what it really is, and don't allow yourself to shit your pants quite yet. You know what I mean? You know, take a step back and maybe, you know, but that, I think everybody could learn from that. We were kids, and like I said before, one of the things that I would say to anybody and give advice is be open to the other person who's trying to work out what they think they can add as well. You know, give them a chance. Give them a chance. If in the end they say, you know what, this just doesn't work, and you both agree on it, well, then they have to take that loss.
Right. Right. And that's part of the
Well, it's
process.
not even a fucking loss. They just have to accept that and move on to the next door they might be able to open.
Exactly. And maybe that idea will work for something else, or
Yeah.
you know, it's all going somewhere. It's
There's so many ideas that I wish I didn't get frustrated. Oh, it didn't work here. And just erase
right.
it. I have so many ideas that I wish I still had. I was an eraser. I erased, I was a deleter, a
Yeah.
habitual deleter, especially up in Warwick, where that's where the name Davenport Cabinet had come from. I had a room there that I miss it right now, because I had a room where I had every instrument that I needed. I even had V drums. I had a drum set in the basement mic'd up. And I had so many ideas that I was just like, why did I get rid of those? Once you get rid of them, they're just gone, you know?
Yeah. It's weird.
I was stupid.
Well, I mean,
I
it's
mean,
part
I
of the
was young.
process.
I was like, it was an OCD kind of thing. I got to clear the deck. I got to get rid of this because it's just going to haunt me that it never went anywhere and it still exists. Those things could work right now. you know?
Yeah.
I found things from the second stage era, even just riffs that were going to maybe go over a song, like some riffs that I had Claudio working on 2113, and there was a couple of riffs within it that a lot of them were riffs that they were the same guitar parts that we played on the actual version of the album, but it was him just working out an idea for this long song that it would become. I think it was only half of the song by then, but I added all these guitars to it. Now, granted, a lot of those ended up being on In Keeping Secrets, but there were a couple of things that I remember listening to it, and this is probably about a year ago, and going, oh wow, that could have been used, and it still could be used for something, because it's so different, and it's nothing I would do now. And if I learn it now, it's going to be so different, like, so another set advice: don't erase your sonic journeys. That's why we have hard drives now. Just keep them.
Right.
Look at Prince.
Right. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Let it all out.
Yeah.
I would like now to get nerdy with you. Can we get nerdy and talk some gear?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do my rapid fire questions. I'm going to give you a series of this or that questions. It's try your very best to pick one or the other, but the answer is probably yes or both. So you can have an opinion. It's okay. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Humbucker or single coil pickup?
I always went humbucker. I would always usually go humbucker, but I've used single coil on a lot of stuff. Not being a gearhead, I'm not. So in not being a gearhead, it often comes down to somebody else suggesting, that part really would work better with a single coil, or humbucker is usually what I already have. So
Texture.
Somebody probably would lead me to the single coil.
Okay.
Which there's a great interview with Jerry Cantrell recently. I don't know if you saw that one with
Beato.
What's his name? Who did? Oh my God, how am I forgetting? As just a little brain fart. Just did David Gilmour.
Rick Beato.
Yeah, Rick Beato. He did. Check out the Cantrell one.
I will.
Because Cantrell talks about how like you'd think he's he's not a gearhead. I mean, he had his talk box. He had this and certain overdrives and stuff, but he always relied on people to kind of say, hey, you're going to want to use this because this is how that melody. I really relate to that. That's always how I've been. I'm a collaborator, even in gear. So go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's awesome. I will definitely check that out. If you're playing a humbucker equipped guitar, would you prefer a Les Paul or an SG?
Yeah,
I know. I just got to ask the question, man. Okay.
Les Paul. I do love SGs. I have some that I love, but.
All right. When you're rocking your Les Paul, do you prefer 9, 10, or 11 gauge strings? I'm
in 10 now.
Okay.
I was 11 for a while there, but I like to think that I play like less of an ogre finally. But yeah, I do 10s.
Okay. For your guitar pick, thin, thick, medium, particular gauge?
It's thick. It's thick. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get away with medium, but I tend to stick with the thick picks.
Okay. I'm trying to make them more Gibson guitar centric questions. Okay, an acoustic. If you were to grab an acoustic, a Martin or Taylor or a Gibson?
For years I used Taylors. I love Taylors. But I recently got a Gibson acoustic that I fell in love with, and so I'd say that they're on an equal ground. Martin, I never used very often. I think they're beautiful. I've picked them up, but Taylor has been on a lot of records that I've played on, and Gibson has been on the newest. The acoustic that I play on, any of the newest stuff, would be
beautiful.
Yes. These are more long-winded than you want.
No, absolutely, dude. No.
Dude,
no. My question's rapid fire. I love the answers because it builds context, dude. Yeah, no, it's fine. Okay. You can talk as long as you like. I like it. This is good.
Right on.
Amplifiers, tube or digital?
Tube.
Okay.
Tube.
Do you find like touring like or is it harder? I mean, probably not at the level that you're at, but like. No, I see everyone doing the Kempers and the fractals.
We're doing fractals. Yeah. Harder. We did have these. Matter of fact, V-Man, a good friend of ours who is actually the bass player of Slipknot now, had built us these beautiful racks with all these pedals and boutique pedals and all the pedals you'd want, and we had the board set up so we could, switch to any sound we wanted, and it was just so much gear, dude. And then all of a sudden we started getting into the fractals and the axe effects, and sky's the limit with those things. I'm not for recording, no.
Right.
But sometimes those end up on the recordings too, because there's so many sounds you can get with those. But live, I even use that live with LS Dunes now. I have a fractal, I have the axe effects with Dunes and with Coheed.
Nice.
And I travel so easy with it, and I could tell what sound I'm going to have already.
Yeah.
I don't hit a knob and fuck, what happened? And I have to have somebody rush out. No.
I have the Axe FX 3 for like quick studio things, but then when I do gigs, I use the FM9, which is kind of just like the all-in-one floor one of them, and it's everything.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that.
It's killer. Good. Really killer.
You got the 3 though, huh? You got the 3 at the spot?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Claudio's using the 3 now. I still use the 2.
I never I just, when I got into that world, that was the one that was out, so I went for it. But like,
that's
actually
the newest one still, right?
Yeah. But it was actually, I know this is relevant. So you guys are going out with Periphery in the spring. So Jake, one of the guitar players, we went to high school together. So he was one of the first people I did the interview with, and then like I met Mark. He told me that because he grew up there, and we were like, we had no idea that he could, and he was like no, I remember you guys doing shows and you were just starting touring, That's so cool. What a world, man. Yeah, I'm so excited they're on Mastodon tour. Oh,
it's so fitting, dude.
That lineup is I can't even fully process how epic that lineup is. I will probably drive to Saratoga, I think is the closest one.
I got you. You let me know wherever you want to go.
I love that. Thank you.
Saratoga is a good one to go to, though.
Okay, we will talk. Beautiful. All right, a couple effects related questions and then some band ones, which you're going to hate. But let's start with the effects. So delay or reverb?
Reverb.
Okay. Fuzz or overdrive?
Overdrive.
Phaser or chorus?
I would say phaser. And when we go back to fuzz and overdrive, it's a very difficult one. Can I say different? Depends on the song.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. The effects one, the answer is yes to all of them because like
God, it's both, and it depends on the song. And reverb, I only say reverb because my favorite, like I said before, Neil Young's one of my, but he has, he has a delay on a lot of stuff too. But the reverb and the high reverb on like some of that dreamy. Even beach sounding kind of stuff, like reverb is just such a wonderful thing. Absolutely. So I stay with reverb on that. Cool, but reverb I love. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's the phaser and the chorus one always trips people up because neither of which are super, popular in current music. But I think Pink Floyd, I think a phaser, I think Have a Cigar, and I just
I would go phaser.
Whammy or wah pedal? Very different, I know.
Well, I used a Bigsby, but I would go wah if it was between like depending on what kind of bar we're talking about. Like, if you got a Bigsby for me, they're very different. That's more the tremolo effect. And so I would go with a wah.
Okay. All right. So the last handful are a this or that with bands, and it sucks, but Beatles or Stones?
Beatles.
Okay. John or Paul?
Yeah, you're right. I hate this. I would go John.
Or George.
Just John. Oh, George is my dude. And George, it's not about the songwriting. It's about the relatable, after watching the documentary, he had his little hissy fits and you're like, oh, come on, dude. But, I guess just where he took it from his position in the band is pretty inspiring just to go on. And I grew up, he went on to do things like Traveling Wilburys and working with Jeff Lynne. And I know they all worked with, Lennon didn't work with Jeff Lynne, but I know Paul McCartney worked with Jeff Lynne, but I didn't like the stuff he came out with Jeff Lynne as much as I like George Harrison's stuff. And George Harrison is like, if you think of it as like a whole career and the span of his career, I like what came out of that more.
Fair, very fair.
George is my favorite, and it's not out of some. Well, I've been the no. It's not that. He's my favorite. You know, I just bought All Things Must Pass on vinyl again the other day because I got this box set thing. So, yeah, George.
He is the unspoken hero. Like when I used to ask that question, I even did it now. I forget to say him because most, like, you know,
What about Ringo?
Cool. Yeah, no, that's a
yeah,
different animal.
I do love Ringo. I saw Ringo's All-Star Band with my father and a couple of friends, my uncle and a friend named Jimmy back in probably about 2010, and it was with Todd Rundgren.
Wow.
And who I'm a big fan of Todd Rundgren, and it was Steve Lukather. Come on. And you watched that documentary, the new documentary?
Yeah, no.
Oh, so good. You got to watch it, the yacht rock documentary. But it was Steve Lukather playing, and then what's his name from oh God. I
gotta borrow someone's Paramount password so I can watch that.
Oh, dude, I mean, I wish I could send it to you.
I think my son has it. I'm gonna get it.
But Mr. Who's the bass player, singer of Mr. Anyway, he played like Kyrie, like, you know, nice. All these 80s songs and Broken Wings. And, you know, it was so awesome. And then he played the few Beatles songs that he sings, and it was really cool.
It sounds like a great lineup.
Woods. Yeah, it was awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Very cool.
Anyway.
Bowie or Dylan?
We give Ringo more points for that one.
Thanks. Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good gig. Bowie or Dylan?
Bowie.
Okay. Zeppelin or Floyd?
Oh, I would have to go Zeppelin just because of what they meant to me early on, you know. But Floyd became more of an influence on what happens musically, what happened musically for me. But Zeppelin was the first thing that really opened my mind.
Okay.
So my uncle left his video of The Song Remains the Same at my grandmother's, and I watched that, and boom. Yeah.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Zeppelin 1 or Zeppelin or 4? Or 2 or 4, I'm sorry. 2 or 4?
2.
2. Okay. If we're talking Pink Floyd, is it Dark Side or The Wall?
The Wall.
Agree. Pearl Jam or Nirvana?
You know, my son would want to kill me for this, but it'd be Pearl Jam for me.
Yeah, that's the right answer. It's the right answer, goddammit.
Yeah.
Good. And lastly, Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
Oh, come on. Women and Children First is one of the best albums ever. And Van Halen too. You know, Sammy Hagar had his place. I respect him as a musician, but there's no David Lee Roth. You know, I mean, people say, well, he's not a great singer. I mean, he is. I mean, he's not. He's not like Sammy Hagar in his, like, you know, prowess, like, you know, with notes and stuff. But I mean, he had that high screech, which I've always bummed that's gone. But, you know, because it's just gone. I saw them on the reunion twice, and, you know, and you heard the albums. What was cool about the albums is Eddie Van Halen started doing the screech more often, you know, like to kind of fill it. But he still had that pizzazz, and he still had that, you know, like, so it still made up for it. And even when he's just doing that showman kind of thing, like it's what Van Halen was.
I agree.
Or heard, not, you know, Van Halen was, you know, all of them, but I mean, it's.
No, I know what you mean.
That was the essential part of what they had early on.
It was explained to me one time that Sammy Hagar may technically be the better vocalist, but David Lee Roth was the better David Lee Roth, and that in itself, that's it.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool, man. Well, that's my question.
We were at JR's the other night, and it was like, you know, a little bit of a late night, but I, you know, I showed up, and a friend that who lived in Suffern for years, but do you know Jesse? They call him Jesse Anytime.
Yeah, I think we went to high school together.
Yeah,
pretty sure.
He might be younger, but I knew him when we were much younger. Our parents were good friends, and we used to hang out. But he was getting tattooed, and Women and Children First. Just I was blasting that, singing along. Take Your Whiskey
Awesome.
Home, you
That's
know,
great.
Tora Tora.
It's legendary.
Lost control, lost control, lost control. It's the best.
The Alex Van Halen book is pretty cool if you haven't checked that out.
Oh, I did the audiobook.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean, we could do a whole episode of this just about rock books.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that's what we'll do. When we do the in-person one, when I get it set up, we'll talk just books and documentaries.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, those are my questions, brother. Thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate that we made this happen.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it, brother. I hope I didn't go on too long about stuff.
Absolutely, dude. This has been my favorite one. This is the last one of the year, and this is the way to do it. So thank you. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas.
I'll be hitting you up.
All right, brother.
We talked about that.